Looking at today's fast-paced world, one would think that healthy, caring relationships built on mutual trust, understanding, and support are a thing of the past. We hear so many horror stories of people leaving abusive relationships completely defeated and unable to move forward. And it is not so common at all to hear of or see success stories where a couple stays together living a happy, fulfilled life. Despite what may seem a sad norm or reality, we are all deep down inside yearning to find that one person in our life that would walk with us in a deeply caring way, and our relationship being based on mutual respect and understanding. It is even more challenging for business owners who devote their whole selves towards their passion and may at times forget the power that lies behind forming wonderful, loving relationships and the direct impact these may have on their business. So, what does it take to form a kind of relationship that supports and elevates, even if this part of your life has not necessarily been picture perfect up until now, or even if it's been downright disastrous? Let's talk about it today with my guest, Roberto Paez, who, along with his wife Amanda, created a project called The Conscious Couple, where they help women love and trust again after a life altering heartbreak. The Conscious Couple project is the result of the personal experiences of both Roberto and Amanda, of years of abuse, fear, trust issues, and finally finding and nurturing what they themselves call a dream relationship. Hello, and if you're new, welcome back to Habits of Influence, a podcast by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of entrepreneurship and building a movement. My name is Magdalena Hanna, and let's dive right into this week's episode.
Everything that happens is motivation.
Hi, Roberto. It's so cool to have you on the show. Thank you for showing up.
Hey, thank you for having me here, sister. It's a real honor.
First, before we even begin, I wanted to say congratulations because I saw that you won first place in the motivational speaking contest. Well done, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a really incredible, loving, nourishing, humbling experience. I appreciate that.
So I can assume that our listeners or our viewers are in for a treat since you're very, very powerful in the way you speak your message. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to serving today.
Awesome. Roberto, you speak very candidly about your experiences of what you've been through, but I wanted you to talk a little bit to our listeners about your story because I think this is the basis of what you do in the first place, isn't it? It comes from experience. It comes from your own personal lived challenges that you have
Mhm.
decided to do what you do and help others with their trouble, with essentially moving from a past hurt or a challenge or a hurdle or even very, very tragic situations like abuse to happy, loving, fulfilling relationships. Can you please tell me where it all began? What is the story behind the story? Because there always is, isn't there?
Yeah, great question. So my story started when I was about 10 years old. It obviously started before that, but there was a really distinct moment that happened when I was 10. And when I was 10, it was the day of my grade 6 graduation. And I was planning what I was going to wear to this graduation ceremony. And back then, like, we didn't really have much money. Like, my mom was on disability and we lived in like a 1-bedroom apartment where we shared the bed. And sometimes, she would sleep on the couch to give me the bed. And my mom really wanted me to get a suit, so she was willing to pay for money to rent a suit for the day. But like, I didn't want to wear a suit because, one, we didn't have the money, and two, I didn't want to be like everyone else. I was willing and wanting to be different than everyone else. And it just so happened that I had just got like this incredible Spider-Man shirt. It was like this button-up shirt with Spider-Man all across it, and that's all I wanted to wear, right? And when I told this to my mom, she was really frustrated with me and couldn't stand the idea of her son standing out. And then to give a little bit more context there as to why, like, my mom is Polish, born and raised in Poland. Her mom, my grandma, was born into a Jewish family when World War II started, and
Ooh.
she barely survived the Holocaust. So my mom grew up with the mindset that standing out leads to suffering.
Mm.
That's a belief that she had that she never consciously ever addressed. And so because she never consciously addressed her internal pain, she projected it onto me in the hopes that it would protect me, not realizing that her unhealed trauma was causing trauma within me.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I ended up going to the graduation. I was wearing the Spider-Man shirt. I ended up winning the Student of the Year award, which at the time I had such a poor view of myself. Like, I was shocked that I could have ever won such an award. Right. And then when I came home, my mom didn't show up to the ceremony because she was pissed off that I didn't listen to her. And my dad didn't show up either. Those are really the only two people that I had here. And they
Mm.
didn't show up. And so I walk home with this huge award, hoping that, my mom was that this award would maybe buy some peace in the house. And the conclusion of that day, she kicked me out of the house. Right. And so at 10 years old, what I learned, or the way that I interpreted that situation, is if I express myself, that leads to pain.
Oh,
If
wow.
I express myself, that leads to abandonment. Okay. And so my whole life after that was this like series of seeking validation, seeking approval, seeking, especially of women. Like, I never felt like I belonged in general unless a woman liked me or validated me. Right.
Okay.
And in when I was about 20 years old, so that was about 11 years ago, I met someone. And I was convinced that this was the partner of my dreams. Still completely unaware. Everything that I just shared with you, like, I only became aware of these things, of these internal stories, just within the past few years, probably about 5-6 years of me like beginning to do this inner work to transform myself.
Mm.
And when I was in this relationship, there was a lot of betrayal that showed up right from the get-go. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to process it. And so instead of actually talking about what I felt, I just took my insecurities, took my pain, and I just shoved it in a box and pretended that it wasn't there.
Mm. Yeah.
And what that caused me to do is it caused me to cheat on my partner constantly behind the scenes. And just so everyone knows, my definition of cheating is when we do or say something we wouldn't do or say if our partner was present. That's what cheating is to me, right? So for years, I would, flirt with the cashier when my partner wasn't present. That to me is cheating, right?
Mhm.
I would let that woman hug me a little bit longer than appropriate. Cheated. And then there was, like 2 or 3 times where I really did commit like a physical act of cheating. And after holding the weight of this guilt for years, after what I had done, eventually I just came clean. I was like, yo, like, I can't, like, there was a point I literally wanted to kill myself because I couldn't handle lying every single day. Although I hadn't cheated in like 2 years, I still was like, I'm pretending to be a man of integrity.
Yeah.
Right. And this is what my entire speech was about at the Speaker Slam competition. It was talking about how the key to belonging is learning how to live in our own integrity. Right. That is the key, because when we are in our integrity, we feel like we belong here in our life. But if we don't live in our integrity, it's like committing infidelity with the validation of others against our own soul. And I did that for so long. And then when I was faced with my divorce, that was like the beginning of my healing. And that was about 6 years ago. And after being someone who was a big part of the reason, like, I was the reason why my ex experienced life-altering heartbreak. And I saw how detrimental that was to her. I also saw my mom never deal with her life-altering heartbreak. And it caused her to project all of her shit, all of her pain onto me. And then I was forced to like do all of the work because she didn't know how to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason why I feel so connected to helping women the way that we do, because it's not just about them experiencing love and trust and intimacy, which, yes, is all these amazing things. It's also about like the next generation, because a lot of our clients are parents, and they've all had similar stories like I have, or they've had crazier heartbreak than I have, and they refuse to allow the patterns of generational trauma to continue. And
Yeah.
I'm a byproduct of what happens when people don't do the work, and I want to make it as easy as possible, because I got kids too, you know, like I want to do everything I can to help as many people as possible, so that the next generation doesn't have to deal with the same shit that we all have. So that's a little long version of everything that has happened to me to get to this point.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I really, really appreciate that. You are able to be so open. One thing that kind of comes to mind when I'm listening to this story, though, and don't get me wrong, I know it's very important, and women are naturally more emotional, and things like that do cut us deep. But in the whole midst, when you're talking about your story, you talk about you're helping women, and I completely understand that part. But at the same time, you talk about your own lived experience as a man. And what I'm wondering about is, because we tend to talk about things on this podcast that not a lot of people want to talk about as well.
Sure.
And as much as I understand and value what you do, I'm just wondering, where is the men's hurt aspect in all of that in your vision? Because there is more and more prevalent that men are being hurt by women equally as much as women are being hurt by men, and for the same underlying reasons, right? I'm assuming, because we do tend to say hurt people hurt people. What would you say to that? Because, focusing on just one side of the equation, I don't think that it entirely resolves the problem. And there's also more and more men feeling the type of hurt that is in their mind unresolvable, but because they are men, they are not able to talk about it. They are not able to go through the journey, and they are not able to do the work, because they're being told they have to be strong, quiet, not sharing what they feel. What would you say to that?
Yeah. So it's very clear to me that part of my purpose is to lead men. I got 2 sons, right? So that to me is like a clear sign that I am here to raise men, right? And I love doing men's work. And at one point, that's all that I did. But what we noticed, so Amanda and I, we run a program. Our program is called Firestarter, and we've been running it for a few years now. And what we noticed is that the people who actually got the most value out of it, the ones who really created a lasting change, the ones who not only took what they got from it, but allowed it to inspire those in their life as well, were powerful, high achieving women. And so as we started to notice that theme in the work we were doing, we're like, okay, like we're gonna pay attention to what the universe, what God is telling us, which right now, Firestarter is best for this type of person. Now, to answer your question around men, like I definitely have a vision to support men. Like I am here to serve men. I'm just focusing my attention right now on our Firestarter program and serving the women that are currently part of it and the women that are joining it, because I'm seeing there's something really magical happening about, with the sisterhood that starts to get developed, right? Like a lot of these women, they're badasses. They're like super independent. They don't need anyone to take care of them, although that is what they want. Not that they need it, they want someone to take care of them emotionally, to show up for them emotionally. But the idea of being vulnerable with a person is scary for them, because that requires them to let their guard down, and they've been hurt, right? And so that's difficult for them to do. But in this environment, it's easier. So that's part of why, again, like to answer your whole question, like that's why we're focusing on women, and currently right now not on men. And it's not that I don't want to work with men. I can just feel right now in this season of my life, this is where I need to focus. But you can expect that in 2024, I will have something to support men with, because I've had a lot of men reaching out to me recently.
Mm.
And I've worked with so many men over the years, and I deeply love the opportunity to help men sharpen, to help men be in their integrity. And there is like a different flavor in the way that I get to coach them than when I do with women. And it's not that, it's just that the way that men are, I can have a very different style of coaching with them that
Yeah.
is more, that's better received by men than I can with the women that I work with. So, yeah.
And would you say it's the same underlying principles? I mean, if people are hurt, would you say that it's, like I say, you still haven't done this, but what if you would imagine working with men, would you say the same or similar tools would be valuable for them, or would it be something completely different? And it's funny, before you answer this, is a lot of the times I'm being accused like, oh, you're against women because you always advocate for men. No, I'm a mom of a son, of an 8-year-old boy, and I can see what's happening, and I'm trying to be a reasonable, down to earth person. And there's a lot of crazy going on in this world right now. And I'm petrified. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just petrified. And I'm wondering, would that be those same tools that you would be using towards men as you would be using towards women?
Yeah. You ask really smart questions. I really
Thank
like
you.
your questions. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So, in our coaching style, Amanda and I, we have a model we call the fire starter model, and it can be summed up in the acronym CUTE, C-U-T-E, and this applies to men or women. However, with men, and I'll explain the model in a moment, but with men, men grow through challenge. We love challenge, right? And we want to be challenged. We want to there's just something about challenge that calls us forward to expand. Right. And don't get me wrong, challenge can totally expand, a woman for sure, but it's just different. It's just not the same. Like you hear, David Goggins is like an extreme example of that, right? Like the guy who's just willing to go to the ends of himself to experience all of himself. And that type of expression of masculinity has been a part of, us for as long as humanity has ever existed, right?
Absolutely.
So the model is CUTE. The first C is confront the past. You need to be willing to confront the trauma, the pain that you've experienced in a way that creates resolution. And what I mean by that is a lot of people think that their trauma is what keeps them stuck. It's not your trauma that keeps you stuck. It's your perception of your trauma that keeps you stuck. You think that because of what you experienced, it makes you a victim, or that people should feel sorry for, that you feel sorry for you, when in reality, the power of this is learning to really look at it, learning to take responsibility for your feelings, for the way you interpreted your trauma, and then learning how to forgive the people involved, yourself included, and then learning how to accept the situation so you can choose to get empowerment from it. Because if you don't get empowerment from it, then what is the freaking point of it anyways, right? And to me, that's a choice. It's a very deliberate, intentional choice. I'm really curious, what do you hear? What's your thoughts on that first part?
It actually inspired my next question, but go ahead. You will find out. You will find out in a moment. I think we as a society, we have, and I think it's very poignant what you said. We are missing the element of accountability nowadays a lot of the times. And I'm thinking that maybe the reason why, I wouldn't say people are lazy and unwilling to work in their relationships specifically, because it's so open right now that people don't even want to get into relationships. I'm wondering, actually, okay, let me ask this question. What is your take on that? Are people just lazy and unwilling to give from themselves because there is a lack of accountability, and there is this outer wave of information that you can use your trauma as your excuse, and people don't want to address it? Like you just said, most of the people don't want to work on that little part of just acknowledging, hey, this is my part in this is what I can do about this. Or is it a case of it has just become too overwhelming and too busy for people to to even attempt to work on that?
I think that a large portion of people have just tolerated mediocrity. They've just
I
they've
love
just
that.
right? They've just tolerated that not great is good enough.
Mm,
That miserable is the standard, right? And then anything outside of that is seen as impossible, is seen as not for me. And just I just think people just aren't equipped. I don't think that it's that people are lazy, right? But don't get me wrong, there's definitely a bunch of lazy people, and it takes work. Oh my God. Just like it takes work to build a successful business, it takes work to build and create a successful relationship. If it didn't take work, if it was easy, we'd all be in amazing relationships, but it does take deliberate effort. However, if you've been conditioned to believe that your the abusive, trauma-filled life is all you've had and is all you will ever have, you won't even attempt to create something outside of that, because in your mind you think that that's all that's possible. You need to be willing to, again, confront what you believe about yourself in the world and be willing to put in the work to create new, empowering beliefs about yourself in the world. Because if you don't believe it's possible, it doesn't matter how much effort you put in. You're always going to come up against the belief that it's not true, and you will just gain confirmation of that in the pursuit of that thing. So
yeah.
I think it's just, yeah, people tolerating mediocrity and just not being equipped with the beliefs or the identity that anything they currently have is possible, which is
Hmm.
heartbreaking, and I want to help change that for sure.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But what would you say to the fact that, okay, yeah, there was a lot of instances where people just stayed together because for the sake of a principle, right? But the fact of the matter is there were some values that are no longer values today. And that was the putting in the work and cultivating the relationships and knowing the value of a family unit, which I believe is not so common right now. And people think that it's, as soon as something goes wrong, I'm gone. I don't need to address
Mm,
it. I don't need to work on it. And I'm wondering about that part because yes, we have been settling on certain things for a very long time, and now the appetites grow. It's a completely different world, and we should have expectations of what a good healthy relationship is, but at the same time we are rejecting things that were good, nice, and healthy in the sense of
wow.
the traditional, like I said, family unit that had been normal back in the day.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think there's like this interesting fight for freedom. Like, I want to be free and I want to express myself and I want to love whoever I want, which, I think is really beautiful. There's an element of it that's beautiful. I actually have friends who, are in like live a polyamorous lifestyle and that's worked for them. But to me, that works in theory and it works very poorly in practice. I've yet to see one person who successfully pulls it off in a way that is like empowering for them and everyone involved.
Mm,
I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to be like, yo, like you're my one, you're my person, and I'm committed to go through all of it with you, and I'm committed to devote myself with you. And it doesn't mean that like you need to always be like in a monogamous relationship. Maybe there's a season, a few years of monogamy, and you decide to explore, but like you're still this like unit together, right? The beautiful thing about relationships is you can actually create whatever relationship dynamic really feels good for you. Um,
and for
and
the other
to
person.
and of course, right? For the unit itself, right? I
Yeah.
always teach that in any relationship, there are three entities. There's you, there's your partner, and then there's the relationship itself.
Hmm.
And all three have unique needs. And
Hmm.
when you want to meet the needs of your relationship, you first need to meet your own needs. Like you must. That is an absolute must, because if I'm not meeting my needs and I'm always focused on meeting my partner's needs, then I'm meeting her needs from an empty cup. And that's going to lead to resentment. That's going to lead to burnout. That's definitely going to kill intimacy for sure. Because I'm not pouring into her for the sake of the fact that it's true for me. I'm pouring into her because I want her validation. And like, like
Yeah.
I've been there. I lived there for a long time. And then,
Oh, we all
and then
have.
totally, right? But then my second priority when it comes to the needs of the three of us is to support her in her meeting her own needs. because if she's not meeting her needs, then she cannot show up for us in the relationship at 100%. So that needs to be my second priority, is empowering her to take care of her, while her second priority is to empower me to take care of me, because she's number one in her own mind and her own heart and her own life, right? And then our third priority together is to meet the needs of the relationship. And then if we can get our priorities straight and we do that together, we set ourselves up to create something really magical, right? And there was something you had said earlier around like the family dynamic. I know there was like a specific question there. Do you remember what it was?
Why do we reject things that are good in the pursuit of trying to, up our standards and seeking things that are better? And of course, those boundaries or those requirements or our needs need to be, addressed, of course, to create a healthy relationship, because every single part of, like you said, every single part of the unit needs to be happy. But why at the same time are we pushing towards rejecting things that were working?
That's a freaking unique question. I love that. I think everything is a mirror to our relationship with ourselves. So if something is working and it is amazing and it is good, and I begin to reject it because I'm looking for better or more, then it's likely that I have an internal story of like, I'm not enough. And if I'm not enough, then this thing that's in front of me is definitely not enough, because I can only see what's in front of me based on how I see myself. It's like wearing glasses and a lens. If I'm not enough, I'm going to see not enough everywhere I go, which is why doing the like internal work to remember that we are already complete, that we actually are enough. We don't need to do more or do less to be enough. Like babies, got an 11-month-old son upstairs. He doesn't think he's not enough. He's doing his thing, screaming, laughing. He wants food, doesn't want food. He doesn't give a shit. He's doing his thing. He already knows that he's enough, right? And just as we grow up, we forget that because of the way that we interpret our trauma. But I do think, though, that people do sometimes stay in relationships for the wrong reasons. I don't think staying in a relationship for the sake of the kids is the right move. I really don't. And the reason why is because, like, if I'm unfulfilled in my relationship, meaning I'm not happy, if I'm not happy in my relationship with literally one of the most important decisions I could ever make in my life, which is my partner, then that means that I'm modeling for my sons that, like, this is what a healthy relationship looks like, when it's clearly not a healthy relationship, because this is not me being at my best. This is not my partner being at my best. So I want to be in a relationship where I know that us being together is going to help me continue to be the best version of myself, that is going to help her be the best version of herself, so that we can build the most incredible life possible, a life that we are so proud of. Because what else are we here to do than to learn how to live a life that we are proud of? And that's the kind of man I want to model for my kids, to show them to never settle, to show them to like raise the standard for the type of relationships that they have in their life. And sometimes it does mean like, yeah, like having some really difficult conversations. I'm not saying that, oh, if you're not happy, you need to leave the relationship. No, like put in the work, do everything you can to make it work, do everything you can to help your relationship thrive, and recognize that we cannot do it by ourselves. Right? No matter how much I want it, I can't make my relationship with Amanda thrive into something magnificent by myself. It doesn't work. It's a dance, right? It's going to require us both to do this together. And if I've done everything I can, and I feel that no matter what I do, it's not getting better, then yeah, then maybe it's the time to uncouple. And yeah, it's so difficult, like I've been there. And like getting a divorce when my son was 2 was like one of the hardest things I've ever gone through in my life. But it also showed me that this is why it's so important to be in integrity, because I wasn't in integrity. That's what led to the death of my marriage. That's what led to my family being torn apart. And I will never make that mistake again. So now, like, especially with Amanda now, we've been together for a number of years. Like, I speak my truth to her. She knows who I am. I don't hide anything from her. She doesn't hide anything from me. And then together we're showing up from a place of like authenticity, of realness. So now I know she accepts all of me because she's seen all of me, and I accept all of her because I've seen all of her. And look at the example we're setting for our kids. Our kids see this authenticity. We don't hide our disagreements from our kids. Like, we don't sit and have big blowouts. I mean, we have pretty conscious conversations even when we disagree, but like, we do that in front of our kids. I want them to see, yo, this is how you have healthy conflict resolution, right? Take notes. And they may not be literally taking notes, but you know, they're registering it, right? They're
Absolutely.
seeing this is how mom and dad move through conflict. They actually talk about it. They never call each other names, ever. I have zero patience for that shit, right? So I hope that answers your question. I know that was a bit
That's
of a long tangent
brilliant.
there.
Do you not think, like, see, it's like, that's why I love to ask questions like this, is because it makes people think about things that you don't usually ponder about. And I absolutely agree with you. And I love what you said about the fact that there comes a point where you decide that you need to uncouple. It's not like, oh, the first traction, that's it, I'm gone. You
That's
did
right.
clearly state that, yes, we are trying. And I don't get me wrong, I completely agree with you. In fact, I have split up with my child's dad for the same reasons. It's because we could not create a unit that was happy together. But being separate, we are very good parents to our son as co-parents.
Awesome.
Which is also not a normal or current thing on a day-to-day basis, but we understood that we need to take our ego out of the equation, and we need to focus on what is most important. And I can see this or hear this when you're speaking about your family and your situation. It's the children that are the most important, because they are going to take things out of it. And I came from a family, okay, my parents are still together, and that they really got each other's back, but they also hate each other's guts sometimes. And I know for a fact they might potentially be more happy separately. But at the same time, they've been together for so many years, because we're running on 50 now, that they're just so used to being with each other that they don't see another way.
Yeah.
But, in today's world, I'm assuming they would have those opportunities. They would have those options to make those decisions, which was not so common back in the day, right? They did stay for the children, and it wasn't always healthy for us as the children. So I do have to admit, there is this element, and I highly agree with you. What I do not agree with is just, young people just treating it as I call it the McDonald's type of relationships, or fast food type of relationships, where with the first traction, people just, flee and decide, oh, this is not for me.
Totally. And I mean, it's very much in line with like the Reels, TikToks, short form content world that we're in,
Exactly.
right? It's like quick and fast, and it's unfortunate that there isn't as much sacredness and reverence
Yeah.
brought into relationships and brought into each interactions, So yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure.
So let's take a few steps, towards our listeners. They are business owners. And speaking from my own experience, and speaking from the experience of a lot of people that I speak to on a day-to-day basis, it's all great fun and wonderful. And everybody wants to be in a good relationship. Everybody wants to find that one person who, like you said yourself, understands and elevates and cares and just uplifts, the way one another uplifts the other person. But a lot of the times it's not so easy when you're a business owner, because the nature of that work is so different. It's so out of the ordinary, despite, so many people going into business right now, and probably there's going to be more prevalent than actually being a fully employed person for somebody else at some point. But it is still different, and it still requires a lot of effort. And now I'm not saying, it requires a lot of effort whether you are in a relationship, whether you're seeking in a relationship. And that's what I want to get to right now. Seeking in a relationship when you're a business owner is absolutely terrible. First of all, because you tell yourself that you don't have time. Second of all, because you're so passionate about what you do that it kind of goes somewhere on the back burner, right? What would you say to people who are seeking love, and what would your recommendations be to open up to the idea that work is not everything? And I'm going to give you a hint what I want from you, because I've noticed from your content, you're very big on speaking the correlations between business and relationships, and how a good, healthy business actually impacts the success of a business.
Totally. Yeah. So the first thing I would say is to all the entrepreneurs who are building a business, running a business, and who also want a relationship, my first question to you is like, well, what season are you in right now in your entrepreneurial journey? Is now the season where it's really time to like actually just focus entirely on the business and like, can you just accept that and just let that be the case for right now? Because I think one of the big problems is like this back and forth of like, okay, I need to focus on the business. We're in this big growth. We're building momentum, but I really want the relationship. But like, I feel like I'm really called here. It's like, yo, like let go of any guilt attached to either and just decide if this is where you're at. Just decide that, hey, maybe for the next year, I'm going to focus on my business. I'm going to build it. I'm going to build a team and I'm going to scale. I'm going to do whatever the thing I'm going to do and let that be okay. And don't feel bad about it. Like just be you and own it. And then for those who feel like they have the space, or those who feel like they want to give the space, but they're using their business as a distraction from getting into a relationship, which is honestly, that's typically when those people join our program, is when they become aware of the fact that like, look, like I'm busy. I don't consider, like a lot of times our clients are insanely successful, but they don't consider themselves successful, right? They're like, I'm not successful, Roberto, but like they're telling me what they're doing and the things they're doing. I'm like, yo, you're totally at that point. But for that person, I think the question that I have for you is do you want to get to the end of your life and feel like you didn't put in enough effort to create the relationship of your dreams? Because the reality is we can all make more money and we are never going to make more time. And the whole reason why we all do what we do as entrepreneurs often is to have more time with the people we love. We solve problems. We want to solve the problems for our family. We want to solve the problems for the people that we care about. But if all we're focused on is work, we're going to get to the end of our life feeling like, wow, like I didn't make enough time for my kids, or I didn't put any effort into building a relationship with someone and now I'm alone, right? Or no wonder that person left me because I was treating my business like my partner when my partner was desperately aching for my presence. Right. And so to that person, it's like, and this is, and I'm also talking from experience, like it's been really easy for me to prioritize business. I love our business. I love what we do. And there's been times where that's gotten in the way of my family time. That's gotten in the way of my time with Amanda. And we've had some honest conversations. Right. And I just refuse to be the kind of person who, makes all this money and makes all this impact on the world on a global level. And I completely forgot about the people closest to me.
Yeah.
That would be like just like devastating to me, you know? And so the encouragement I think to everyone listening is, like you'll never get back your time ever. Like you won't. The time is going to be gone. And the more time we distract ourselves from the thing that our heart and our soul is calling for, that's less time to actually do and be with the people we want to be with. So I hope anyone listening who hears that, I just say, like, stop doing that. Stop. Pick up the phone, call the person that you know you want to talk to, reach out to the person that you know you want to reach out to, and start putting yourself out there, right? And the way to put yourself out there is to really let go of any fear around being yourself. Because so many people have on these masks and they pretend to be someone they're not. And when you pretend to be someone you're not, you attract people who are attracted to this fake version of you. And the problem and I did that for years, and that led to resentment. It led to divorce. It led to depressed. It led to me broke in my mom's basement. All right. The key is to learn how to be yourself, accept yourself, and just really learn to love and accept yourself from that point. And then you'll attract someone who's actually into you because you're into you and you're not hiding who you are.
Boom. Super powerful. And I think what is great about what you said is that it works both in business and in personal relationships, because once you do explore who you actually are, and once you start showing up from the authentic truth that you represent, and I don't mean authentic truth is like telling a sub story of your car accident, and your epiphany of how I'm not talking about all this marketing bullshit. I'm talking about real, raw, who am I? Why am I here? Sort of shit. You are going to make both the impact that you wish in a business as well as attract the person that is going to value you for who you truly are. So, what I think people struggle with is understanding that you can combine the two at the same time as well, providing that you still stay true to your values. Because I see a lot of people either just going in relationships and making excuses, oh, that's why I can't do business because I'm always so focused on having a person next to me. But there's also, I don't know what's your take on this, but it also stems from being unsure with yourself, having to need that validation all the time, nonstop, as well as the people who are making excuses that, hey, I'm actually busy. I don't have time. That's the reason why I'm not dating, putting myself out there, because it takes time and I'd rather do this one thing or do this marketing thing or do this social media post or do this editing spiel or whatever it is that people use. They're both excuses. So what's your take on the balance between one and the other?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's number one about figuring out what's your unique balance, right? Because everyone has a different one. I'm not here to tell anyone what their balance is, right? It's about figuring it out what it is for yourself. And what you described around the one person who's like seeking the relationship and the other one who's in essence kind of avoiding the relationship, they're both just defense mechanisms that typically stem from the same place. And everyone has a unique story, but it always comes back to like this lack, right? This like not enoughness. I'm not enough. Or so for me, it's like I'm unlovable, so I'm going to be abandoned, right? That was my story, but it all comes back to like I'm not enough to receive the thing that I want. So I'm gonna put on this mask of like people pleasing and making it about everyone else and never making it about me, because the moment I make it about me, it leads to pain. That's how I would interpret it, right? But these are all just defense mechanisms, and it requires us to be really honest with ourselves and really confront our past and how we've chosen to live our life. Because then once we become really aware of these defense mechanisms, it's not about them going away, because I don't think they ever fully go away. I think what happens is they stop controlling our lives. We become aware of them. And so when they show up, we're like, oh, there's that part of me that wants to people please. I can feel it. I can feel the discomfort that comes from not doing the thing that I always do, but I'm still going to choose to do something different. I'm going to choose to not people please and like express my truth in this moment. Or for the person who's like, whoa, like I feel this tendency in me to put up a guard and do it all myself and push people away and not make time. I'm noticing this feeling, so I'm going to lean into intimacy. I'm going to really consciously drop my guard down no matter how scary it is. I'm going to try my best to let my guard down and let someone in. Because all these defense mechanisms do is push the very thing we want away.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't actually help us. It protects us from getting hurt, but it also protects us from experiencing the love, the intimacy, the success that we want.
So, what is the biggest challenge people face then when trying to sustain healthy relationships or build new healthy relationships? And let's make it a little bit spicy, because there's a lot of misconceptions in every single industry, and I'm sure there's some in yours as well. So, what are the biggest challenges, and what is the worst piece of advice you have heard being given to resolve those?
Okay. Were the biggest challenges for people in relationships? I think it comes down to how people deal with conflict. Because conflict in any relationship is going to do one of two things. It's either going to bring you closer together, or it's going to create distance and you grow apart. There's really no in between, right? And when people have unhealthy ways of dealing with conflict, it creates distance. And if that's the pattern that they're stuck in, then until they break that pattern, they will never have intimate, close relationships with the people in their lives. Because here's the thing, once someone gets close enough to you, there's going to be conflict. It's inevitable. Conflict doesn't mean like a big blowout fist fight. No, like just disagreements, challenges. It's going to happen. And if you never let someone close enough to you that there's never any form of conflict, then it's like, how close is that person really, right? And it's not to say that you need to have conflict for it to be an intimate relationship. It just seems to be a nature of intimacy. When intimacy happens for long enough, conflict tends to show up, right? And so I think that's the biggest challenge, is people don't know how to move through conflict in a way where both of you are better as a result of it. Right. And that to me is like the secret sauce. That's like the magic. When you and another person encounter conflict and you move through it and you both feel empowered as a result of it. Like anyone listening, right? If you think of someone who is really close to you, a parent, a sibling, right? Even a partner, a best friend, and you've encountered conflict that you got through together, right? Like you truly got through it. You experienced the pain attached to that. On the other side of that conflict, you have like this like battle tested feeling where you're like, yo, like we can get through anything. Like if we got through that, like we're good. Because it's so easy to be in a relationship when things are easy. It's so easy to have a conversation with someone when you're feeling good. But when things don't feel good and you still choose to move through it together and you move through it in an empowered way, that's magic. So I think not knowing how to move through conflict is one of the biggest challenges for people. And to answer your second question around the worst piece of advice that I ever received was don't tell her. Don't tell her. Right. So like when I was, there was a really specific moment where I was, driving in my car in my previous relationship, and I was like just bawling my eyes out because the guilt was like overwhelming me. Like I'd been pretending to be happy for so long in my relationship, putting on a smile for my wife and son, right? When internally, like I never felt like I belonged anywhere because no one actually knew who I was. And so I picked up the phone and I called one of the only people who knew the truth of my lie, right? And I said to them, I was like, yo, like I think I need to tell her. I think I need to tell her the truth. And their response to me was like, dude, you're crazy. Everyone cheats. Keep your mouth shut. Like, if you care for your family, just shut the hell up. Like, you're not like, are you ever going to cheat again? I was like, no, I'm never going to cheat again. And then he's like, then dude, just take this to your grave. Right. And that was their advice. And like, I understand where that's coming from. Like, I get it. And it was killing me. And I was not in my integrity. I was pretending to be a man of integrity when I wasn't. And so that was the worst advice. And I think that that's what a lot of people do. They have this internal conflict in the relationship within themselves, and they hide it. They pretend that it's not there. They put on a fake smile. Oh my God, how many women have I spoken to where their partner comes to them and says, hey, let's have sex. And internally in their heart, in their body, they want to say no. They're not in the mood. They don't want to have sex. It's an internal no, but they say yes.
Yeah.
Right. They say yes, and they literally let their partner use them, right? And the partner doesn't even know that they're using them. They don't even know that that their actual yes is a fake yes, because they're so disconnected from themselves.
Yeah.
And that shit happens all the time. And this whole like don't tell them, I think, is bullshit. And I think it is such a killer of intimacy. The word intimacy, you can break it down into me, you see. Which means I need to let you actually see my truth. I need to be open enough and real enough to let you see into me, right? And God, we can take this even another layer where like if like so many people come to Amanda and I, they're like, I just want someone to be honest with me and be real with me, right? But here's the tricky thing about truth. Truth inspires truth. And what I mean by that is I express my truth to you, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to inspire you or it's going to trigger you. Right?
Yeah.
Because a trigger is an internal experience of a truth that is being triggered within you. It's not about me. It's something going on within you. But when people are triggered, most people don't take responsibility for their triggers. They don't think, oh, whoa, I'm being triggered. Maybe I should be curious enough to look at myself and see what is going on within me that is coming up. Instead, they go, you did this and I'm upset at you. And if every single time you're honest with someone and they respond to you aggressively or assertively, or they avoid you, then that's going to cause me to not want to be open with you in the future. Right. So like there's this delicate balance of being real, being honest, but also like taking the responsibility of being willing to hold our partner's honesty. Right.
Absolutely.
So
and you talk about, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
And you talk about triggers a lot in your content. I've noticed that this is a big theme. And in fact, there's another situation where I just wanted to chime in my 2 cents, my controversial 2 cents. We live in the times where young people, overuse and abuse certain words, what I call buzzwords, right? Abundance, authenticity, all sorts of buzzwords that are being created, trigger being one of them. You hear a lot of people just like having the ick. The young people have the ick, or they're being triggered with everything and anything. What really is a trigger? And if we really do have one in us, I mean, the real one, like the internal one, because of something that happened in our life, how should we respond?
Great question. Triggers or treasures? Triggers are treasures if we are brave enough and courageous enough to look for the treasure. So what is a treasure? A trigger. Oh my God. Trigger, treasure, trigger. Here we go. What is a trigger? So a trigger is when something externally, something outside of us happens that we experience through our senses, through our sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. And then we interpret that external thing through our senses, through what we believe. And then it comes through as a trigger, right? Typically in the form of anxiety, typically in the form of like some sort of like fight or flight response, right? Now, before I share what to do, I actually really want to lead with what not to do. The worst thing anyone can do in their trigger is react immediately. The only time it's appropriate to react immediately is if your life is literally in danger. Because what triggers are there to actually protect us, right? Biologically, that's why we developed this ability to get triggered, right? If a bear shows up, yeah, it's a good thing that I'm triggered to find a way out of the situation as quickly as possible, right? That is healthy. But the big mistake that people make is they get triggered and then they are in this heightened emotional state of fear. And then they just react. They just react, right? And when we react in our triggered state, we do and say things that we later regret almost every single time. Yeah. So what do you do when you're triggered is to, number one, do everything you can to slow down. Like slow your breathing down. Okay, like take conscious breaths. And the simplest way to describe this is take a short inhale, like a big inhale, but a short one, and then a long exhale. If you do this long enough for 5 minutes, this will calm your nervous system down. It will. Just do it. 5 minutes, long exhales is to calm your nervous system down. Another thing you can do is take space from the situation before you react, before you respond. Right? Like literally walk away, tell the person you're in front of, hey, like I feel triggered right now. And I don't want to do or say something that I'm going to later regret. So I'm just going to take a little bit of space, right? I'm just going to walk away, which is really difficult to do because in the moment, you're not going to want to do that. In the moment, you're going to want to freak out or say the thing or do whatever your triggered response naturally has you to do. Like it really takes like dedicated practice and discipline to not be victims to our triggers. And the part around triggers being treasures is that if you become curious about your triggers and you see them as moments where your subconscious, right, your unconscious mind is attempting to reveal a truth to you, that's when you create actually a lot of power, right? Like I have a really, do I have time for one story real quick?
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. Beautiful. So this was a few years ago. And this is about 2020. And, if you were looking at my life, like you would have seen that I was really happy. Amanda and I were happy. We just moved into our home. I had an amazing relationship with my son. Our business was beginning to blow up. That's what you would have seen. But what you didn't see was the fact that I didn't know how to relax. Like I was working like 16-hour days, 14-hour days. And the only way I could relax is if I was working that much, right? And then one day, Amanda, in her infinite wisdom, saw that this was unsustainable. So she politely and lovingly called me forward, right? Which is what a great partner does. A great partner calls you forward on your shit when you're not showing up in integrity, right? And like it's such a practice to learn to welcome that. Right? Because I would not be the proud man I am today without her active participation and support in my growth, hands down. And she says to me, she says, babe, like, I really don't think this is healthy. I think you should take a day off. And my immediate reaction was I laughed in her face.
Oh,
I was like, there's no way I'm taking a day off. And then I became quickly aware of how resistant I was to taking a day off. And I was like, I should probably take a day off. If I'm this resistant, there's probably some wisdom here for me. Right.
yeah.
And so the next day I take the day off and like, oh my God, I was so anxious, Magdalena, like so anxious, nothing. And there was no reason to be anxious. There was nothing to be anxious about. Right.
Hmm.
And here's the thing about this anxiety, right? Is it's unconscious. I'm not consciously trying to be anxious. It's an unconscious process. And I tell all of our clients that our unconscious mind, our subconscious, the 95 to 99% of who we are, is always whispering to us and through us what we believe about ourselves in the world. And it's really important for us to learn how to pay attention and listen to what our unconscious is trying to communicate to us and through us. And so at this stage in like this day, I'm getting curious, I'm trying to understand, but the more I'm trying to understand, the more anxious I feel, the more frustrated I'm becoming. And so Amanda says, why don't you take our dog out for a walk? And I was like, okay, fine. And I like dragged my heels out the door and like, I was just pissed, you know, I'm like, I don't want to feel anxious and I'm annoyed that I can't figure this out. Like I'm a coach. I should be able to know how to do this stuff. I help people with this shit all the time. Like, why am I not figuring this out? This was years ago. I have definitely a lot more compassion with myself and patience with myself now. And so I go to the park. And as I'm going to this dog park that I'd been to so many times, I noticed there's this path that I'd never seen before. And I remember thinking like, this is weird. Like, how have I never seen this? I've been here so many times. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to walk down this new path. And as I go down this new path, I notice that someone had cut out these like perfect little logs and placed them on either side of the path. And I was like, well, this is cool. Like, all right. And I'm still anxious. My dog is having a great time. I'm trying to breathe. I'm trying to get out of my head and into my body. But whether I'm in my head or in my body doesn't matter. I'm still super anxious. Right. And I keep going down this path. And then eventually I get to this area and someone had taken these like broken branches and like weaved them together and made like this wall of like broken branches all along the side of the path. And at the very top in the middle, there's a handmade sign that said Bailey's Lane. It honestly looks like a forest fairy tale magical thing. It's so stunning. It really is. But what's interesting is that when I saw this, I wasn't mesmerized by the beauty. I didn't look at this. I wasn't in awe of it. My first thought was whoever made this is trying to lead me to a trap. Right? Crazy.
Okay.
Right? Probably not. Right? Probably not. I don't think I'm that important that someone made this elaborate scheme to put me in a trap. Right? And so, but what's really cool is I quickly became really aware of that thought. And I was like, why is that the first thing that comes to mind? So then I asked myself, well, what does this path represent? And it represented something that's outside of my control. And in that exact moment, I realized why I'd been so anxious. I'd been so anxious because when I'm working 24/7, that's me trying to be in control.
Yeah.
And the moment I'm resting and I'm not working, I'm out of control. And in my mind, when I'm not in control, I'm being led to a trap. Right? And so this is why putting in the work to understand our triggers are so important. Because if I ignored that anxiety, if I tried to numb it, if I tried to distract myself from it, I never would have received the wisdom that came to me that day. Because that day, when I became aware of that, I made a decision to create a new story. And the new belief is that everything always works out in my favor. Right? But I never, and then again, by developing that awareness, I'm starting to live life that's actually in alignment with how I want to live. Otherwise, I'm a victim to my anxiety. I'm a victim to my triggers and my interpretation of my pain. And I just refuse to live like that. And I encourage anyone listening to treat your triggers as treasures and to learn how to get extremely curious about them, to understand what is trying to be revealed to you and through you. Because I'm telling you, if you look for it, there is a gift for you in it.
Wow. And I think this makes a beautiful full circle with everything that we've been talking about. Because every healthy, fantastic relationship starts with healthy, happy individuals. And what you just said here carries so much power that once you get to know yourself, those triggers, and try to learn to get lessons out of it, those treasures, right? That's the exact moment where I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are ready to create something beautiful with someone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, because when you start to get curious with your own triggers, you also start to get curious with your partner's triggers, right? Because you stop taking them personally. That's the mistake. That's one of the big mistakes that people make in conflict, right? You're triggered. And instead of seeing this as, whoa, like this is like a moment in time where your pain is being expressed. This is an opportunity, a beautiful opportunity for you to learn how to move through it, for me to hold you in it, for me to help you heal this part of yourself, right? Because this is a partnership game. There's aspects of my healing that are only my responsibility that no one in the world can help me with. But there's aspects of my pain and trauma that were literally inflicted by other people that I continue to perpetuate. That's actually going to take the help of my partner to help me with it. Not that that's her responsibility, that I'm forcing that on her, but she chooses to be there to support me through it. Just like I choose to help her heal whatever she needs to heal. Right. And because now there's like a curiosity to her own triggers when she gets, and like, let me be clear, different. I'm not perfect at this. Like there's times I totally take it personally. Right. But I'm much more practiced in this area than I ever have been. So when Amanda's triggered, I don't take it as personally. I still see the beauty in her. I don't see her as, like trying to hurt me or whatever the story used to be. I'm like, whoa, this is an expression of her pain. I'm going to get curious here. Because curiosity is actually how I can best support her, me, and our relationship in this moment.
That is absolutely fantastic. That is so fantastic. Thank you so much, Roberto. And you guys, if you are curious on how to get in touch and get some more goodness from Roberto and Amanda and from the Conscious Couple Project, you are able to get, and I've seen those, multiple resources on their website. But Roberto, I'm going to ask you directly, where can people find you, connect with you, your website or otherwise social media? What is the way that people can get in touch if they want to explore this further?
Yeah, totally. So the best place for sure is our website. It's theconsciouscouple.ca, and conscious is CONSCIOUS. See a lot of people who mess that up. Theconsciouscouple.ca. You can also check us out on at TikTok, which is at The Conscious Couple. I'm really active on Instagram. It's at Real Roberto Paez. And I highly recommend people check out Amanda's podcast. It's called The Sovereign Sound. She's doing some really amazing work there as well.
Fantastic. And of course, as usual, guys, all the links for Roberto and for Amanda's podcast, which we highly recommend, are going to be in the description of the YouTube video, as well as the description of the episode on any of your favorite podcast platforms. So don't forget to check this out, definitely. And if you like this episode, don't forget to give a love, a thumbs up, and press that notification bell so you never miss another episode in the future. And give us a review. What did you like the most about Roberto's episode? I think there's been so many golden nuggets dropped, but everybody is going to take their own lessons, obviously. So I'm looking forward to your comments. I'm looking forward to your reviews. Please do so on your favorite podcast platform, whichever you like, or on YouTube, where I think, Roberto, you're going to be able to come over and answer some questions if people have any. And with that being said, I'm going to say again, thank you so much for coming. I love this episode. I absolutely loved it. And I hope you guys loved it too. Thank you so much for tuning in yet again. Next week, you're going to have another fantastic guest with my wonderful co-host, Ian. And I'm going to see you in my next one. Thank you so very much.